Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. In this video, I want to highlight an area in chapter 15. This is the considerations for clients with musculoskeletal issues. I've directed students to read through this one Apply What You Know box, and it's on page 696, bleeds over into 697. And it's speaking about assessing clients with chronic musculoskeletal conditions. One of the things that ACE does and does pretty well is gives you some real world scenarios that you should be thinking about, or what you would do in real world scenarios. And that's why this Apply What You Know box. And by the way, just as a sidebar here, anytime you're going through the textbook, it's a good idea to read through these Apply What You Know boxes. They're very helpful, and in some cases, they're actually pretty good summaries of what you've been looking at in the particular chapter. So I just wanted to kind of go over it with you. And I've had some students ask me if it's going to be, if this stuff is going to be on the exam. And the answer is, well, yeah, sure. I don't know if it's going to come specifically from literally uh, these Apply What You Know boxes that we see here, but for sure you will see questions related to this material. And like I say, the information, particularly in this part of the chapter, acute injuries, chronic injuries, conditions, they're giving you a bunch of bullet points, which you should be looking at anyway. And then they end with sort of a summary in this Apply What You Know box. So I just wanted to go in here, take a look at it, and kind of go over it with you a little bit. Assessing clients with chronic musculoskeletal conditions. Um, and what ACE is saying is that assessment, whether administered formally, if you do an established protocols or shared with the client, or informally conducted through observations of basic movements. Now, you should already know, if you gotten to this point in the textbook, that ACE kind of recommends that you talk to your client about whether or not you even need to do an assessment. I know you as the trainer, you're thinking, oh, we're going to do this assessment and we're going to do this and this and this. And what ACE is recommending, this is why they have their ABC method, for instance, is to look at the client as more of a participant in whether or not you do the particular assessments they have listed and they recommend. And so in some cases, you're not doing an actual assessment, but what you are doing is that sort of informally, when you're looking at an individual doing, say, one of the basic movement assessments, right? The squat, some of the other things, the bend, things like that. When you're having a person go through some of those, you can almost look at it from the standpoint of what else can I see, right? About while they're doing that assessment that gives me some cues that perhaps they have a chronic injury, right? If they're doing a strength test, a strength assessment, or muscular endurance assessment, and they make a move and they grab their lower back or whatever the case is. I'm just throwing out possibilities. That's kind of the point, is that you can make sort of this informal assessment. That's what they're saying. Or informally conducted with observations of basic movements during an initial workout. Okay. So again, ACE is not telling you that you must do certain things, but they're saying, they're recommending that if you're not going to do specific assessments, well, you might actually start working out and you're doing a warm up with your client, and they go, oh man, yeah, my lower back. Well, you just figured something out. That is an informal assessment, I guess you would say. But that's what they're saying. Informally conducted through observations of basic movements during an initial workout. It's a really good idea. If that happens, that you make note of that. So the assessment is a critical piece of creating an appropriate program designed for any client, especially when the client is struggling with chronic or overuse injury or condition, right? So that could be an acute injury, for instance, or chronic, and overuse injury or condition is going to generally fall under the chronic issue. So when working with these clients, the trainer is looking for additional cues during the assessment, including wincing, right? Like that. Was that a good wince? Wincing. Like that. Hesitancy, that's a good one, by the way, especially when you're dealing with older clients. So they can happen with anybody, but quite often with older clients, we see from a balancing stabilization perspective, you will find people will be hesitant to kind of do things. So you're having them do lunges, or I don't know, you're having them do something that requires some level of balance. You do it with no problems, like a step up. Step ups are a great example of this, where there's hesitancy to step up into it, or there's hesitancy to step down, right, from a box or whatever it is you're doing. So those are great cues as to a potential issue or problem. Slowed or erratic pace, balance, and or jerkiness during movement. Each of these indicates either pain. This is critical. That indicates either pain at any level, right? Even a 3 or a 4 on the 0 to 10 pain scale, or neurological inhibition. And they have bolded the term neurological inhibition. And that's really important. If any of these is observed during the assessment, the trainer should ask if the client is experiencing pain. Okay, if so, at what point in the movement does the pain begin? Yada yada. Exactly where does the pain origin? So now you're just asking some questions, and it's a really good idea to do that because you might be able to isolate things that they don't know about, and perhaps their physician or doesn't even know about because they're not going to bring it up because it doesn't happen all the time. It only happens when you make a certain movement or a particular part of an exercise. Remembering that chronic pain takes an emotional toll, okay, as well as a physical one. It's essential that the personal trainer remain empathetic and avoid judgment. All right, whatever. The experience of pain is different for everyone. Not sure what you're judging, but you and professionals don't do that anyway. I'm not really sure what the point of that is. When a client has experienced chronic pain or an overuse injury, like this is one of the reasons why we find people don't want to do a lot of exercise because they had a bad experience, right? They got really sore training with a client at one time. You're going to get sore. You should get sore. It's just part of the nature of the beast. But crippling soreness is not good. And so people can be very hesitant. Range of motion may be affected. There's inflammation, scar tissue, adhesions, or by the sensation of pain at the end. I mean, there's a whole number of issues here that they're hitting you with, and it's really important that you know these things, right? You got to be, you got to be insightful and have some discernment as to what's going on. When somebody moves down to this point, they're doing their curls great, but they get hesitant at the very bottom, extended range of motion prior to locking out, and there's a little bit of pain. Well, that tells you something about potential tendonitis or inflammation. You're not going to make that determination, but it allows you then to add to the assessment and take note of that, right? If they do have a chronic inflammatory response or injury. Take a few minutes to assess posture and flexibility prior to activity will alert both the client and the trainer to limitations in movement. One of the most important things about this is the fact that you need to be watching your client, not just excited that they get their bench press or their curl or their shoulder press. Or these are great opportunities as a trainer to understand biomechanics, kinesiology, the pain issue, stability, balance, things like that. It allows you to be a whole lot more discerning and precise about that individual that is in front of you, right? Trying to do these exercises. And the more you know about it, the better your ability to help them is going to be, right? So use of the static posture flexibility. They're talking about chapter 10 will allow you to understand these limitations before beginning the exercise program, right? The more you know about this stuff, the more you can assess and understand that individual's particular problems and issues, their body, the better the training protocol will be, hopefully, if you do it right. Observations made during the assessment of primary movements may help determine which range of motion assessments should be administered. And now you got to go back to, again, you got to go back to some of these other chapters, particularly chapter 10, which is the muscular assessments, right? Muscular training assessments. Before beginning an assessment with a client following an injury, you already know they have the injury, right? So before you begin the assessment, put the client at, it's important to put the client at ease. Okay, sure, not an issue with that. Explaining each movement and how it may challenge the area of injury and reiterating that the client may stop at any, okay, this is just standard. This is standard professional protocol. Does that hurt? Okay, stop. Okay, don't do it if it hurts, right? That's obvious. I would hope that's obvious, but it does need to be said and put on paper. Okay, so stop at any time. Look, we're going to do this, this, and this. And given that you had your shoulder operated on, your hip, your knee, or whatever the case is, we're going to go through some assessments. Look, if it hurts at any time, it feels uncomfortable at any time, just stop. It's not that important that we get through, extended ranges of motion. You tell me. And that's basically what they're saying. Tell the client they can stop at any time. And it's going to go a long way in easing the mind. Yes, of course, it'll ease the client's mind, we hope. Before the first assessment, and again, this is post injury, right? The trainer should, and now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that ACE says you should remember, and you might want to write those down. These are important. Explain that the assessment is going to help determine starting point, right, for safe exercise. Tell the client that they may request a modification for any movement. We're talking about standard professional practice. Explain the perceived pain scale, right? And that's figure 15.4. Go back there and take a look at it and ask the client to share whenever they are in pain. Just keep in mind, this is a touchy subject. If they say it's a pain, yes, absolutely. Give me on a scale of 1 to 10, explain it a little bit deeper for me. Sometimes certain clients, and you could probably figure it out with those particular clients, perhaps it's really not an 8 or a 9. Okay. I don't know. You want to err on the side of conservative with this and go by what they're sharing with you. Inform the client that they should move only within a pain-free range of motion. Absolutely. And it's an art. You can take folks, especially if they've already gone through therapy, and they've been released. If that's the case, like a musculoskeletal injury, then of course there's a little bit of nuance as to how far with that range of motion and discomfort you can go. Ask them if they have questions or concerns. Remind the client that they can ask questions at any time. So, using the ACE IFT model, trainer can build effective program design progression that slowly, effectively addresses deficiencies in range of motion or movement quality while remaining mindful of the injury and avoiding exacerbation. It is a good apply what you know box. So read it. I highly recommend that in all these scenarios, read the apply what you know box. Because like I say, what they just put in here is a pretty good summary of some areas in this particular chapter. So I hope this was helpful. If doing a video like this does help you in understanding the material better, then please write the word understood. Yes, do more videos like this, Doug. If that is the case, I'm more than happy to do that. Hope you have a great week. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. Let us know how we can be of assistance to help you pass the ACE examination on the first go around or whatever time you're at with it. If it's a second time or the third time, whatever the case is, we want to help you with that. Okay. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye.